This is Ryan Elliott for Boxing Social in association with Betfred, who just concluded the Jdnxtgen weigh-in ahead of the show tomorrow night at your call. With me, Frank Smith. Frank, other than being blinded by my big old light, how are you doing?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. I can barely see you.
That's all right, we'll get on with it. Let's start with Conor Benn, main event tomorrow night. Weighed in just here. Jussi Koivula failed to make weight. Has he since came back? I'm not sure what's going on with that situation. Will he be okay to fight tomorrow?
Yeah, all good. He's made weight. It was only a tiny amount. Sorry, someone's poking me behind the curtain. It's only a tiny amount, so yeah, all good for tomorrow night.
Conor headlines for the first time. We've seen him last time he was at your call in an unbelievable fight. I'm sure it's a fight you guys didn't necessarily want to see him in so early. Would you settle for something a bit more boring from Conor Benn tomorrow evening?
I don't think he's got boring in him, has he? You know, but he it's great to see him headlining his first show. You know, following in his father's footsteps, and it's a huge night for him. He had a long period out, obviously last year from I think July and then to April. Had that comeback fight in April, and this will be good to get him back in a real test. I think the whole time he had out with his injury, he stayed in the gym, he stayed fit, and he stayed learning. So that was important, and he's very focused. I think people forget how young he is. And to be where he is already at this stage of his life is quite amazing. I think you're only going to see him develop and keep learning, keep building.
Something I spoke to Conor about earlier. I can still remember the press conference when he was unveiled. It seems like a lifetime ago, but we were all very curious at the time. Is he anything like his old man? Would he be able to forge his own path? But now, you know, we've seen him in the States. We've seen him in a couple of unbelievable fights. We now see him headlining live on Sky. We're starting to see Conor Benn forge his own story and his own path.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as I say, with his age, I think he was 18 when he joined us. And you know, he's had a couple of periods out through injury, but I think now, you know, he's grown up a lot, and I think he knows what he wants now, and he's working very hard. And with no real amateur experience, he's now 14 fights in. This is his 15th fight tomorrow night. I think you're really going to see him developing. And maybe in the past, he's always shown he's got that fight. Now he's gone in, he's doing the learning with Tony Sims, and Tony really feels like he's coming along. So I do think this is you know, a real strong point in the journey of Conor Benn, and on Friday night you'll see a great performance from him.
We always seem to talk about Conor Benn in two different personalities, something he mentioned to me earlier. There's the Conor Benn that is maybe a bit erratic and wants to impress and is just unbelievably game. And then there's the Conor Benn we saw against Joseph Zaradnik that's a bit more measured and maybe shows a few things he's been working on. As you mentioned, he's definitely passed the gut check. Is it now just about getting the balance between showing how game you are and really going for it and boxing a bit more measured at times as well?
Yeah, I definitely think so. But that only, as you say, only comes with the experience. But the key thing is he's got that fight in him, and that's what some fighters lack. He has got that. You know, he will get back up if he's put down, and you know, he'll keep fighting. I think that's one of the most important things you can have as a fighter. So yeah, as you say, now's the time for him to show the other elements of his, you know, his skill set and really put them to work for himself, because he has them. And it's just a case of going in there with experienced fighters, continue the learning process, and I think, you know, it's exciting. It's exciting to see someone, you know, he's got the name obviously from his father, but he's building his own path. So this is the time as he starts stepping up, headlining shows. It's going to be a sold-out York Hall tomorrow night. So it shows the brand, and it shows, you know, our partners, our broadcast partners, Sky, our sponsors. They love Conor Benn, so it's a good time.
Just a while ago now, Conor Benn was calling out the name of Josh Kelly. I think a lot of boxing fans sort of laughed that off and thought, yeah, Josh Kelly's on the fast track to big things, and that's a fight we will probably never see. Now Josh Kelly's been out in the States and drawn, and if Conor Benn comes through after headlining his own show, is that fight a little bit more possible in the coming months?
I think that's definitely a fight that can be made one day, but you know, Josh Kelly's obviously had that huge amateur experience that Conor didn't have. You know, he was with the GB team, and he's been in boxing a long time. I think, don't get me wrong, it's definitely a fight. I think that's something for further down the road for both those guys.
We had a bit of an altercation after the weigh-in. I think, well, I didn't. I certainly was nowhere near, as were you.
I was, unfortunately.
I think it was one of the last altercations we really expected today. There's some really good matchups on this card. There's been a little bit of needle between Richards and Sterling, but the kickoff was actually between Andre Sterling and Josh Buatsi. Did you see much of it, and what did you make of all of that?
Not too much. I think Dwayne Sinclair was in there as well at one point, but he's got his fight tomorrow, so he's got to focus on that. But all handbags, nothing much in there. Just I'm sure you got it on camera. You'll be putting that out, but it's. I think it was just a bit of talk. Andre Sterling's got a big fight against Craig Richards tomorrow night. Craig Richards looked good in his last fight, and this is a big fight for both of those guys' careers. So I think Andre's now gone away, got to focus on that tomorrow night.
Final bit on this card. I think at times since the Jdnxtgen sort of brand, if you will, has been launched, there's been some criticism from boxing fans. But this card genuinely is a very, very competitive card. We've got a couple of great domestic fights on there. Conor Benn tops the bill at borderline European level. Can you just talk to me about the show overall?
Yeah, look, it's a great show, and this is what we're trying to do with the Next Gen series, continuously improve it. You've got Ted Cheeseman, who's coming back after, a loss in a high-level fight against European champion. So Ted Cheeseman on the card. And I think the good thing is now these young fighters, they want to test themselves. In the past, fighters haven't wanted to take the loss, but it's the sport we're in. You lose some fights, so it's commendable that they take these step-up fights. And then, for example, Ted, he's only 12, 13 fights into his career. He's got a lot more to give still. And I think the Jdnxtgen series has been great for these fighters, bringing them through, especially in the sense that we've lost a lot of the pay-per-view stars recently. A lot of them retired. Now's the time to start building these fighters back up to get to those levels of headlining our Saturday Fight Night shows and then eventually pay-per-view shows. So it gives people great opportunities. We saw it with Jordan Gill. Unfortunately, he lost, but again, he took on. It was a great fight. But I think in the past, fighters have been protected probably, and this series steps them on. It gives them the exposure. And it also sort of can put the pressure on them before they get to that top stage. Sometimes fighters are rushed all the way through and then get there and they don't really know how to deal with it. This is sort of steps up to that. They can headline a show at Sold Out York Hall, headline a show in Peterborough like Jordan Gill did in front of a huge audience. So I think it's working really well, and I think Saturday night show is one of the best Next Gen shows we've done. Talent throughout and some great fights.
Moving away from the bill.
Yep.
Did you catch any of the boxing over the weekend?
I didn't. I was actually away. So I saw some of the clips. Tyson Fury did what he needed to do against opponent. Wasn't really on his level. Looked like a great atmosphere. So yeah, I mean, apparently he's back out in October. Very entertaining as always. Josh Warrington, Kid Galahad. I thought Kid Galahad won the fight. But I suppose when you're fighting the champion in his hometown, you need to go out there and really rip it away. I haven't watched that fight in full, but a lot of people think he won it. So he'll be back. Barry will be back, and congrats to Josh Warrington. You see what he's built up there. It was good to work. We worked with him for quite a while, and a huge audience up there. He's got a massive fan base. They love him, and maybe that's a fight that can be made. A fight in the future. That fight can be made again. Whether Josh Warrington wants it or not, who knows?
I was about to ask you where Kid Galahad goes from here, because obviously, though the fight wasn't particularly entertaining, I think the general consensus was that Kid Galahad was very effective at what he did. Yep. A lot of people, as you mentioned, believe he won the fight, but now he very much enhances his reputation as a member of the Who Needs Them club. How hard is it going to be for Kid Galahad to get back in that world title mix?
I think he can, as he's shown here. He got to a mandatory position for the title, and he got the fight. That's the same he can do. He's a skilled boxer. Maybe not always what people want to see, but it's part of the sport we're in. There's different styles to win fights, just like in football. You can stand and defend the goal all day and end up with a 0-0 draw. It's the same with boxing. As you say, his style was effective. I think he can build back up into big fights.
Just a couple more things I want to go over that we haven't really had the chance to speak to anybody about this week. Kell Brook was supposedly retiring according to some outlets, and then Kell Brook came out and said, no, I'm not retiring actually. I was in America, I was trying to get a fight with Terence Crawford. He said now he would only want to go out on a high, he's only after big fights. Yep. What names are realistic for Kell Brook in the coming months?
There are a lot of names, obviously Amir Khan is a name everyone still talks about. Amir Khan's fighting in Saudi Arabia in July. That's a possibility down the line. Is still the Kell Brook fight. You know, there's a lot of names out there for him. He's been around for a long time and he wants those big fights. So that's our job, to work with him to find those. But he's not retiring. He's still got a lot left in the tank. He's still got a lot left to give. And I think you'll see him back out soon.
Let's just touch on Amir Khan briefly. As I understand it, his deal with yourselves is up. He's got this fight in Saudi Arabia. I think it's mid-July, some sort of time.
July 12th, yeah.
Are you guys still keen to work with Amir? And do you think it's a real possibility that you can still make a fight with Brook, maybe in the coming months, or someone else?
I still think it's a huge fight. Yeah, obviously got the Saudi fight on July 12th against Niraj Goyat. So you know he should win that. Amir, he had the fight against, he only boxed in April, so it's good that he's active, he's keeping fit, staying in the gym, and I definitely think that is a fight that can still be made with Kell Brook. It's still a massive fight, it's still a huge fight for boxing fans. It's probably taken a little bit longer than it should, but that's sometimes what happens with these huge nights. But that's definitely something out there for him, and we've enjoyed working with Amir, so we'd love to carry on working with him.
I think it's fair to say both Khan and Brook are at the back end of their careers. There probably wouldn't be a belt on the line if they were to meet. Do you think that this matchup, in spite of it maybe being marinated a little bit too long, is still huge, regardless of whether there's titles on the line, etc.?
Yeah, completely. Even without a belt, it's a huge fight. A belt adds to a fight, but I think a fight of this magnitude is kind of like when we, the likes of Bell Yu Hay. There was no belt on the line there, but it's that real spite between them and the story. There is such a story between these two guys. So you don't need a belt for that fight to happen.
One final thing I wanted to ask you about. Loma Campbell, as we understood, it would be taking place in the UK later in the year. It now doesn't seem to be fully agreed. Could you just shed some light on that situation?
Yeah, look, we're working to try and come to an agreement with Top Rank to bring Lomachenko over, but nothing agreed just now. If we can't agree, it will go to purse bids. But yeah, not too much we can say on that just now. But we are working to obviously try and bring that fight to the UK, as we said.
How confident are you that it will land in the UK?
I think it's our aim to make it happen. Now we just need to come to an agreement. It's always difficult when there's two parties involved, two different rival parties involved, but as we've shown with the likes of Hooker Ramirez, we work with Top Rank closely. Amir Khan, when he fought Terence Crawford, we have a good relationship with them, so hopefully we can make it happen. But with a fight of this magnitude, there's always a lot of work that goes into it. It's never a quick process, and in the next week or so, hopefully we'll be able to give some more news on that.
All right, Frank, I won't keep you much longer. Is there anything you'd like to add before you shoot?
Get a light that's a little bit less bright.
Is that all?
All good. Good to see you. Thank you for coming down.
Right, Frank Smith, thank you very much for speaking to Boxing Social.